I'm Paul Sullivan, your host on the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the go-to parents, often feel they have to hide or at least not talk about the rules. One thing I know from personal experience is being a lead dad is not a traditional role for men, whether you work full-time, part-time, or devote all your time to your family. Parenting is so often left to mothers or paid caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and create a community for fathers who are lead dads and to welcome other dads who want to learn more from them. Today, my guest is Michael Beacham, president of Money Savvy Generation, a financial education firm for children founded by his wife, Susan. They do a lot of things to help children get a better sense of money, but one of the simplest and most effective is their Money Savvy Pig. Prop alert here. It's a clear piggy bank. You can see it divided into 4 compartments: save, spend, invest, and donate. Basically, the 4 things you can do with money besides, I guess, worry about it. I have 3 of these Money Savvy Pigs in my house for each of my daughters. And I met his wife, Susan, back when I was a columnist at the New York Times. So it's really interesting to talk to Michael today. But to say this one thing before joining his wife, Michael worked in banking and consulting. And here's the kicker here. While he has an MBA from Chicago, he has an undergraduate degree in English and theater. Listen up there, parents. He has an undergraduate degree in English and theater. Proof to all of you nervous parents out there that you really can do great things with a liberal arts education. Michael, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you very much.
First question, I'm talking to you, you're in Scottsdale, Arizona, right now, but for a long time you were in Chicago. Let's join something here. Your initials are MLB, a guy initially MLB living in Chicago. So what was it? Cubs or White Sox?
It was Cubs.
Cubs, the Cubbies. Okay.
And that Susan will cringe when she hears me say that, because she was a White Sox fan, still is.
No, a divided household. Yet
household.
You could still make it work.
Yep. Yes.
Wow. See, there's hope. There's hope. There's more and more hope. This podcast is hopeful. One of the coldest I ever was in my life was as a graduate student at the University of Chicago, and I got tickets to, I don't know if it was opening day, but it's one of the, the home opener. They may have played another game away. And I sat there and I was so excited. I want to say there was snow on the ground. I literally had this parka on. I was like, this is miserable. This is everything. But
that sounds like Chicago. And that's why we live in Scottsdale now.
I love it. Tell me about Money Savvy. I think of it as Money Savvy Pig, but the company is Money Savvy Generation. Tell the story. Tell the foundation story. How did it all start some 20 years ago now?
It started when Susan decided to leave her career in private banking. And her intention was to be a stay-at-home mom. And after 2 days of going on walks after getting the kids off to school, her head started spinning, and she realized that she couldn't leave behind the corporate world. And so she started thinking about money, and she thought, well, I should tell our kindergarten teacher, our daughter's kindergarten teacher, that they need to be teaching the kids more about money than just bartering at Thanksgiving, and about more than how to make change, because that was pretty much the money curriculum in our public school. So she actually went and talked to the kindergarten teacher, who said, well, I think that's a great idea, but I don't have time to develop that sort of thing. But you're a former banker. If you want to come in and talk to our classroom, the door is always open. Come on in. Yeah. So Susan decided to take her up on that. And she went back to the house, and she started getting out her flip charts and her poster board, and she started making a presentation that was big and that was visual and that she thought would engage the kids. And it was a hit. And so she came back and did another one and did another one. And then the next year, In first grade, the kindergarten and the first grade teachers wanted to have her in. So it was popular with the kids. It was popular with the teachers. And after 3 years of doing this, she had a pretty decent curriculum that was 8 lessons that engaged parents at the end. And then she had the brainstorm of the Money Savvy Pig.
Every time we mention, I'll hold it up.
Thank you.
I love it.
And I think she told you that when you interviewed her years ago, that the idea came to her in a dream, because she had been teaching the concept of save, spend, donate, and invest using tumblers, different colored tumblers that she would punch hole and twist tie together. So she had, 4 tumblers, labeled save, spend, donate, and invest. But of course, they weren't very sturdy, and so she was noodling on this idea. And one night, it came to her in a dream, a 4-chambered piggy bank, and she had this vision of it. And when she told me about it, I said, "That is one of the best ideas you've ever had." And because she's an idea generator,
right?
And when I don't always say that about all of her ideas, but this one I thought that is a great idea, but we had no idea how to get something like that produced. So we used our network and found a way to somebody who produced piggy banks in China, and somehow Susan found a resource who could actually do the design.
Are piggy banks popular in China? Like, how do piggy bank? Or everything could be manufactured?
Well, everything is made in China, so I don't know how many. The concept.
Was there a model for the pig? Like, is this because he's a he's a happy pig? If you can see this, he's not. He's eating all this money and he's happy about it. And
you'll notice that one ear is up and one ear is down. And that was in her original dream of this piggy bank, that one ear was sort of perked up and one ear was folded down. She found an artist who actually was an artist and a sculptor, I think maybe a 1099, who did work for Disney. He was local to the Chicago area. And she engaged him to first do a drawing of what she had envisioned. And he got the drawing right. And so then he moved on to a clay model of it. And from there, a plastic model that could be then used for creating a mold. And we found a producer in the Chicago area who had a factory in China and got the first prototypes produced, and then refined the design and then placed an order for a container load of them. And this was all on faith that we could sell these things, and we sold out like that.
That's remarkable. I don't doubt this. When this runs, I'll put a link to one of the stories I wrote about your wife. But I do remember she's also in a chapter of one of my books, because you talk about faith, but you also talk about persistence. And I remember she told me a story once of trying to get into law school, and it wasn't going that way. And like her dad, supposedly, I don't even know if this is true, but it's too good of a story not to, called the Pope or somehow got in touch with the Pope because it was a Jesuit law school. And, come on, Pope. Yeah. So
I don't think he spoke to the Pope, but
I don't.
But he did speak to somebody at the Vatican, and then somebody from the Vatican ultimately called the director of admissions at Loyola Law School, and said, I don't know, who knows what they said, but the director of admissions called Susan and said, in all my life, my professional career, I've never had a call like this. And somebody from the Vatican called and said they'd we should let you into law school, and so they did.
So she comes from the point of this story, she comes from a long line of persistent people.
Correct. Correct. She does. Yeah.
So what do you think about, the pig is amazing because, again, I'm going to keep reminding the pig. It is so, visual, and any kid can get it. And And also, and I don't know if this is by design or not, it's really hard to get the money out. Like it's
Yeah.
really hard to pull the money out the bottom. And um, but it's more than that. It's a great tool. But talk to me, and I know at a certain point, you left your own career in financial services to join, Money Savvy Generation. And tell me about how the pig and the curriculum, how has it evolved over the past 20 years? Because there's a couple market cycles that we've gone through. How has it evolved as it relates to kids and parents?
So, Susan's built the original level of the financial education curriculum, which we call Money Savvy Kids. She built it working with kindergartners and first graders. And when we formalized it and made it something that could be put into schools or put into the hands of pretty much anybody with an interest in financial education, so that they could teach it, we leveled it at sort of the second and third grade level in terms of level of sophistication, level of the language. We thought that was a sweet spot because the level that we built required students to be able to read at some level.
Okay.
And not be just beginning readers, but they had to be able to see, the words like coin and currency and be able to read them. And
was the theory that, it was better to get in when these kids were young to help them develop these money skills as opposed to targeting junior high schools or high school?
Correct. So at the time we started the company, there was a lot of high school level material out there. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of not-for-profit organizations that were focusing on trying to get financial education into high schools. And our philosophy was that it's better to help someone form a habit rather than trying to have them
break a habit.
Yeah. So we wanted to start early. And Susan knew from her time in kindergarten and first grade that the kids were very eager to learn about money. It was very provocative. They saw it in daily use, and yet they themselves didn't really transact. And so there was a mystery to it. So we were helping to unravel the mystery a little bit for them about what money was and how it worked and why it existed.
One of the things I've always done, and I learned this from a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine in the New York Times, Ron Lieber, and that was I pay my kids their allowance in $1 bills so that one, they can divide it up, and we talk about how they're going to divide it up. But two, they have a sense of money. Now, when you first started this in 2000, 2001, whenever it was, we obviously had ATMs, but there was still a lot more cash in the economy. And today, maybe I go to the ATM once a month. Maybe I don't know. I literally my local coffee
Almost
shop.
Never. Yeah.
My local coffee shop only takes cash, and that's literally like after I bought enough coffees, I have to go and get more. How has the curriculum? How has the lessons that you're teaching these kids change? As look, you're a parent. You've got 2 daughters. I have 3 daughters. Kids are always watching what we're doing. If we're not transacting in cash, and we're transacting in credit cards, debit cards, it changes it fundamentally. So how has the curriculum had to evolve to still teach the same lessons, but with a different medium?
So I would say that it has not evolved in the original 8 lessons. We're still teaching kids about cash. And one of the reasons is because cash is very concrete.
Right.
And any electronic payment is very abstract. So you have to start with the concrete so that they really understand the concept. We try to teach kids from a very early age that when money is gone, it's gone. And there's no better way than do that than by showing them the physical cash.
Okay.
So you had asked earlier about how the whole curriculum has evolved. We started with one elementary level. We then built and we targeted it at second, third grade. We then built down to kindergarten and first grade. And we used a whole different concept. We used a storytelling concept. And to tell the stories, we took the Money Savvy Pig and we turned it into a puppet. And so to make the Money Savvy Pig sort of the mascot, the friendly mascot of money.
Yeah.
And from there, we then aged up. As our kids aged up, we started working with older kids. And so we built a 4th grade level and a 5th grade level, and then a middle school level, and then a high school level. And then we started writing books for teenagers and for college students, and then for couples. So as our kids have aged up, we've seen how they continue to relate to money. We see what their financial issues are, what is complex in their lives, and we have written about it either in curriculum form or in book form.
Yeah. And, we talked sort of all off camera, but your daughters are late 20s, early 30s right now. Please tell me before I ask it, please tell me they have good money skills.
They do.
Thank goodness.
I'm happy to tell you that they
no, actually they have $70,000 in credit card debt. Like what? No. Okay, good. So it worked.
Our eldest daughter has always worked for companies that had 401ks. And she started putting the maximum amount she possibly could into her 401k from day one. And she has a really healthy investment portfolio now for retirement, set aside for retirement.
That's great.
She has perhaps oversaved in retirement funds in that she and her fiance are struggling now to put together a down payment for a first house.
Right.
Because most of her savings is tied up in retirement money, but that's okay.
Right.
So she can back off now a little bit in terms of the amount of the percent that she's putting into her 401k, so that she can accumulate for other things that she needs.
Yeah. But when you think about, 20 plus years of this now, and, your kids have aged, so you followed them. But when you're interacting with the kids at, still back in 2nd grade or a kid in 6th grade, has anything fundamentally changed? Have things changed about the way they're thinking about money or the way money gets talked about in their homes?
Really, you touched on this a little bit earlier. The biggest thing that has changed is the rapid disappearance of cash and how everything is now, electronic.
Yeah.
And so for our middle school and high school level curricula, we talk a lot more about electronic payments. We have a whole lesson called Ways to Pay. And it helps kids understand the difference between, the important differences in terms of safety and flexibility and who you're paying, differences between checks and ACH and credit cards and debit cards and the like, and why it's not safe to use a debit card everywhere you go, why it's a lot safer to use a credit card everywhere you go. We talk a lot about safety, and we now talk as the internet has matured, so have the fraudsters.
Sure.
And so we talk a lot about identity protection and ways to keep yourself safe online.
Yeah. What about with the parents? How have you helped them have conversations in the home? Have those changed at all?
Susan and I are rarely engaged with parents directly. But when our materials are taught in schools, as they are in a lot of places, the education does make its way into the household. We do engage parents in the curriculum, engages parents or attempts to engage parents. So teachers now have a lot of conversations with parents
Okay.
About this material and money. And I'm not sure I can really address whether or not those conversations have changed over time. But we do know from feedback with parents or with teachers that parents are very thankful that the teachers are doing this in their classrooms. Parents either don't have the time or they don't have the security in their own level of knowledge of financial topics to be able to sit down with their kids and have a lot of these conversations and teach them a lot of these things. They may have opinions, they may have some knowledge, and the fact that the curriculum is in these classrooms is spurring conversations at home that might not have otherwise taken place.
Yeah, and it's also like you are really hitting these kids at their most curious and their most open. And I remember my oldest daughter's 13 and she was probably 4 when she did this, and she went to a friend's house and her friend's house was bigger than our house. And so what did she do? She came back and said, Dad, why is so-and-so's house bigger than mine? And I had to pause for a second because at first you think, oh, good God, I'm raising this materialistic child. She wants a bigger house. We don't have a big enough house for her. And then I paused and I realized her worldview is just comparative. She wanted to know. She literally just wanted to know, why is their house bigger? And so we went into a whole conversation about, choices and et cetera, et cetera. And, as if I had scripted this, not, less than a month later, she went to a friend's house who was smaller than ours. And so we'd set that up. And at that point, she said, okay. And that started in her mind the ability to think through the choices you can, make with money. I mean, this is what the pig is. It saves, spend, donate. That's
exactly what it's about. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And so those choices, let's talk a bit more about that, because I want to make sure, the dads, the moms, the parents listening, really you drive home the point of how important it is to talk about, choices when it comes to money. Even I would argue even more important than actual raw dollar amounts. It's the choices you make. Talk about, how parents can help, obviously we want them to go to Money Savvy Generation, but how they can help, lead those conversations in their homes around money and choices.
So the 4 choices that we teach with the Money Savvy Pig, and that we also teach with the Cash Basic Personal Finance Organizer, which is targeted really at middle schoolers or young teens. The 4 choices are save, spend, donate, and invest. And this is how we tell parents to think about it. Saving is for short-term goals, things that you might need or want within the coming months, maybe up to a year. And investing is for things that are more long-term, things that you might want 10 years from now, because you really shouldn't invest with anything less than about a 10-year time horizon. Otherwise, it's too risky. However, over a 10-year time horizon, you're much more likely to earn a lot more on your money by investing it than you are by just saving it, even in a high yield savings account these days. We also talk about the concept of goals. If you're
before we get to the concept of goals, talk about, as I look at my pig here, save is for more short term stuff. What is the spend then? When you say
so spending is money that you have. Spending is very short term. Things that you are trying to accumulate for next week, maybe next month. Things that maybe you want to buy for yourself, or maybe the spend money is money you're accumulating to buy somebody else a birthday present.
Okay.
And then, of course, donate. Donate is money that you want to spend on other people. The donate slot there is to get kids thinking philanthropically. So it might be money that you're planning to put in the offering plate at church. It might be money that you want to give to the animal shelter, but it's money to help other people, not help yourself, other than from the psychic income you get from being philanthropic.
Sure. And I cut you off there. You said you kind of rolled the conversation up into talking about goals. So talk a bit more. Yeah.
So for each one of the choices, you should have a goal in mind. At least one goal. So let's start with investing long term. What, as a kid, if you're thinking 10 years out, what might you need or want 10 years from now? Well, you might need a car. You might need a college education. If you're a high schooler, what might you need 10 years from now? Well, you might need a house, something like that. So always have a goal in mind, and because goals keep you motivated. If it's something you really want, it will keep you motivated to contribute in that channel towards your goal. Can goals change? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they do all the time. So thinking short term with the save money, what's your goal? Well, let's say I want an Xbox. I want to save up for an Xbox within the next year.
This has been great, Michael. Thank you for being my guest today on the Company Dads podcast. One last question for you. We're talking inflation is at a generational high. There's a lot of discussion around recession in the coming year. How can parents, model or communicate, the reality of today or their concerns about today? How can they model those to their children and help them understand the sort of macroeconomic external effects that can happen on somebody's money and savings?
The inflation that we're experiencing right now is a great teaching opportunity for kids. It's a great opportunity to sit down with the grocery bill from the grocery store, the receipt from the grocery store, and talk to kids about how much more expensive things are today than they were a year ago. Yeah. And help them understand the concept of inflation and help them understand how it erodes your buying power. I notice when I go to the grocery store that some of the items, small items, let's say a jar of jam, the cost of it is in fact about 40% higher than it was a year ago. Well, I'm not making 40% more money this year than I was making last year. And if I'm gonna buy that jar of jam and try and keep my grocery bill in line, keep it under control, then maybe something else has got to give.
Got to give, yeah.
So it's a great opportunity to show kids the necessity of trading off one item versus another, one choice versus another, in order to make the budget work.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm really grateful for you joining me today.
You are welcome. It was my pleasure. Thanks.